These rookies probably already on your radar, but they should be really on your radar because they're not like those top 7 guys we're totally sure of, but they're guys after that could potentially make a huge splash and have a cornerstone hit rate. When we talk about cornerstone being one of the top players under 25 in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Cornerstone hit rates for past the end of the first, early second, they're typically about 30%. Some of these guys, one of these guys, I guarantee is going to end up being a cornerstone asset in Dynasty. So let's look at these 6 guys right here. Let's start with Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas is honestly, maybe, possibly underrated. He's also possibly overrated. And you might think, maybe? That doesn't tell me anything. You're right. Brian Thomas, wide receiver out of LSU. He had 1,000 yards receiving this year playing alongside Malik Neighbors. He was stuck behind Kayshon Boutte first and then Malik Neighbors, and was still productive. He broke out playing alongside Malik Neighbors again during Jaden Daniels' Heisman season. He had 15 receiving touchdowns. He had a 15% target share in that offense. And so, yes, there are things we'd like to see from Brian Thomas. We'd like to see a higher percentage of target share. We'd like to see a little bit earlier of a breakout age. Totally understandable. However, big wide receiver. Shocker. Lots of those here. Checks lots of boxes with his size and his speed. It keeps him out of dangerous territory. And again, we just don't know how he'll do and how he'll function as a wide receiver 1 in the NFL, but he's probably not going to be drafted to be a wide receiver 1. And to me, that is why he is potentially a big value in this year's rookie draft. If he's drafted somewhere that already has an established wide receiver 1, can go there and play wide receiver 2, it's not like we don't know that Brian Thomas Jr. already can play that role effectively when he's being matched up with the second cornerback in a defense. So,
and it's not like we haven't seen a wide receiver 2 be drafted high up and be successful right out of the bat too, like a Jordan Addison. Am I saying that Brian Thomas is Jordan Addison?
No, we're not.
No, I think there's a possibility that he could be productive given the correct situation, though. And he does seem like one of those guys that could get pretty consistent targets just by his skill set. I mean, what I'm seeing here is like he's not a big yak guy. He's not a big average depth of target guy. So he's not really your stereotypical deep threat. Just, I mean, looking at the stats here and some of that, you know, like his yards per reception, like went way higher in 2023 playing with Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. But when I see Brian Thomas, I don't see a dominant, like, do everything sort of receiver. I do agree with you there, Avery, where he's probably going to be
more of a possession guy,
yeah. Mid-second round pick. If you really were to compare him to someone, I mean, he is a bigger body guy. You could say that he's like Nico Collins, like from a build perspective. I'm not saying that he's going to produce like Nico Collins has in the second half of the year with Houston, but I mean, what do you see? I could see him being like a big body Michael Pittman.
Yeah, 58.3% contested catch rate. I mean, to me, he really does seem like a guy that could have red zone capability. I don't think I see him being a dominant wide receiver 1, but again, he's not going to be drafted.
Do you think he could command targets though?
In the right situation, absolutely, because there are plenty of offenses that could use this type of playmaker. Right. And I think the problem with big wide receivers that we've had is that we bet on them being these alpha wide receivers. I think we're going to make that mistake probably with Keon Coleman. I think so. And Keon Coleman is also super crazy, ridiculously athletic, and that's the difference between him and Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think a lot of times we have expectations for these guys coming in the NFL like they're going to be wide receiver 1s. With Brian Thomas, I think he could get first-round draft capital. I really do. It's more likely that he gets mid-second round draft capital, in my opinion.
Yeah, if we're being realistic, yes.
So
now a lot of mocks that we've been doing, we've been forced to take him higher in our mock drafts with landing spots because a lot of his landing spots are late first round. But I just personally don't see, like when you're comparing him to some of the prospects that went in the mid to late first round last year in 2023, I wouldn't necessarily put him on the same level as those guys, at least in the early process, the early prospect profile process. Those like 3 Ps.
You did it.
But once we get to the combine, I'm honestly really interested to see his 40 time because his speed is, at least as of now, what we think his 40 time is, which is in the safe zone for like a 6'4" bigger body wide receiver. He's he's not technically going to be one of those potential busts. That's a big body, slower receiver, one of those, like he wouldn't have to be an outlier. Honestly, it's kind of funny because Michael Pittman was the same size relatively, but he was slower and he had to be an outlier to be successful in the NFL because of his speed.
Yeah.
But Brian Thomas kind of has jumped that hurdle already pre-combine. He's got to prove it again in the combine, but we're just assuming he's going to have a solid 40 time.
Talk about Michael Penix, our next guy on this list. And I know, I
boy.
watched the game.
Michael.
I watched it.
We all watched it.
So
we all watched the game.
Can I just start? I want to start this segment before people comment by saying this.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't think in an NFL where we had Jarrett Stidham making a start this year, Aiden O'Connell consistently starting this year, Bailey Zappi consistently starting this year,
Sam Howell,
Mason Rudolph, and Kenny Pickett both starting in the NFL, Will Levis as a starting NFL quarterback, Desmond Ridder starting, Taylor Heineke also starting some. Not to mention Jaron Hall, right?
Jake Browning, Easton Stick, Tommy DeVito,
Derek Carr, even. And Daniel Jones, honestly.
Yeah.
And honestly, Daniel Jones. You don't think in an NFL where we have those guys at starting quarterback, who was the guy that was the Jets guy for a minute there?
Tim Boyle.
Tim Boyle. Did you watch Tim Boyle play? You're telling me Tim Boyle can be on an NFL roster, back up an NFL quarterback, come in and play NFL snaps, but Michael Penix can't?
And that's a really, really low floor to establish. And we're not even doing Michael Penix as a prospect justice by even bringing up those people because he is so much better. He's so much better as a prospect than those guys are. He's going to get drafted high enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. If it's not his first year and they need to sit him for a year, then it will be his second year.
I don't think he slipped past the second.
No, I said this in the very, very early stages, which we're still in the early stages, but like the even earlier stages, like the pre-early stages of the 2024 class, I said I see past Drake May, Caleb Williams, and maybe Jaden Daniels, I see kind of a handful of second-round talent quarterbacks. And Michael Penix, I did kind of lump into that group. But with this quarterback landscape right now in the NFL, do not be surprised if Michael Penix goes in the mid to late first round. There is a desperate need. So aside from the need, let's just talk about his production. 4,600 yards. He threw for 4,600 yards in his first year at Washington.
I mean, he just played all the time, and so he had 46,000 yards in a season. That's crazy.
3,500 yards his second season. His yards per attempt went up from 8.4 to 9.6. He was a Heisman candidate, a Heisman finalist 2 years in a row, and went to the college football playoff this last year.
Heisman finals. Let me just say that, because a lot of people are like, well, you saw him the first 4 games of the season, he was really good, and then after that, he kind of sucked and he got hurt.
Heisman finalists.
He was a Heisman finalist for the entire season.
Quarterbacks don't generally fall very far in the NFL draft. Like historically speaking, you can go and fact check us if you want to, but I know it's a fact. So look, his overall grade in college this year he was a 4th overall quarterback. I mean, that brings into account his deep ball ability, his short to intermediate processing. Like, he's in my opinion, a very complete quarterback that is mobile, has good enough pocket presence that NFL teams can build off that. And this is a point that we have wanted to make and will probably continue to make throughout the offseason with Michael Penix. His ability to show up in big games throughout the course of his entire career, not just in Washington, but even in Indiana, to me, has given him, that's a good enough resume for him to go high in the NFL draft. Higher than some people suspect at the moment. I understand the Michigan game was not good. Michigan was the best defense that he has ever faced. I understand that. CJ Stroud, unlike Michael Penix, faced one of the best defenses in college football, and he balled out. And that's why he was the 2nd overall pick in the NFL draft. Guess what? We're not predicting that Michael Penix is going to be the 2nd overall pick in the NFL draft.
I mean, we're predicting late first, probably early second. Because here's the thing. If an NFL team's not comfortable enough with Michael Penix to take him in the first round, I can tell you right now, if the Raiders are picking in the second and Michael Penix is there, they'd rather start Michael Penix next year than Aiden O'Connell. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
It baffles me how we all become, and we're not self-proclaimed experts either, but everybody becomes a prospect analyst after watching the college football national championship game.
Our prospect,
it's whatever.
Our head of prospect analysis, Ryan Bread. Shout out to Mr. Bread.
What's up, Bread?
His pro comp to Michael Penix is actually Matthew Stafford. That's obviously a
and
high.
Ryan Bread, he's a comp.
Ceiling,
He's definitely a comp guy.
And he's not a comp
no,
guy.
he is. He's a comp guy. He's a big comp guy.
I think it would be interesting to see the point I say that. The reason I say that is it would be interesting to see, like maybe in the second round, the Rams going ahead and drafting Penix and sitting him for a year.
Well, yeah,
I'd be very
they've
interested in
been
that.
mocked to draft JJ McCarthy. I've seen too.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting one, but it's going to depend on draft capital. So we're going to have to see. But Michael Penix is definitely on our radar. Let's go to our next guy here, and our next guy is going to be Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin is another guy that's like kind of outside that top tier of wide receivers that we know. That top tier being Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Romo Dunze, and then it's kind of like, what comes after this? You've got Keon Coleman, you've got Troy Franklin, you've got Brian Thomas, you've got Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, and some people say Xavier Legette. But Troy Franklin, he is an interesting case because he is 6'2". His last weight was 169 pounds, which is nice, but
really
that's
small.
Skinny. But we have a history, I think, of in Dynasty of taking skinny guys and saying, "Yeah, they're skinny, so it's probably not going to work." When's the last time? When's the last time? Yeah, and when's the last time that actually like legitimately hurt somebody's like in the NFL, like prospect wise, skinniness? He's probably going to put on weight, first of all, but he had
before 2020.
Yeah, he had 1,350 yards this last year on 77 receptions, a 16% target share in one of the better offenses, by the way, on one of the better teams in college football, and 14 receiving touchdowns. He started for 2 years, essentially. He was really good. He's a 5th in the wide receiver class this year in adjusted dominator rating,
Nice.
5th in yards in all of college football. So that's all classes in yards per route run.
Jeez.
He has been efficient. And honestly, right now he's being projected late first, early second, similar to the Michael Penix range. Like we just don't know. And again, what Ryan says here is that he's thin for his height, and it will lead to a lot of divisive conversation regarding his draft capital. There's no divisiveness happening here.
Not for us.
Not from me. I'm not using that as a reason to short.
If Troy Franklin gets good draft capital, like first to second round, and he gets a decent enough landing spot, I'll be all over him if people are shorting him because of his size.
Because he's a good route runner too, and he has the speed and the route running ability to be a very, very good NFL wide receiver. In fact, I do think he has wide receiver one skill set. I do think he has it. I think he possesses the skill set to be a wide receiver one for a team. And people are going to say, yeah, it's the frame, it's the size. And I'm not exactly sure that I'm going to use that as an excuse. So when I'm thinking about Troy Franklin, I'm going to be drafting a ton of Troy Franklin. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, unless his price goes way up, but I expect to get him 108 or later. And I will absolutely be spending every late first that I have on the championship teams, on my second place teams. If Troy Franklin is there, he is a guy that I'm targeting because, again, he's an interesting prospect, but he's going to be faded because of his height and weight ratio. He could be a game changer. He is somebody that I've really had my eye on. Has the production profile, has the skill profile, has the speed. The only thing, the big question is the weight. And I'm just not going to use that as my excuse. So
not drinking the Kool-Aid.
I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid on that. So Troy Franklin, I'm really excited about. I'm really excited to see where he goes and what he does.
I'm also very excited to see where Jatavian Sanders is going to land in 2024.
Yes.
Tight end out of Texas. No one really talks about him.
Nobody.
Because of the legend himself, Brock Bowers, who is one of the better tight end prospects we've seen in a long time.
Yes.
Definitely since Kyle Pitts. Some would argue he's better than Kyle Pitts as a prospect. I would say definitely more mature, less raw, in my personal opinion. But with Jatavian Sanders, he is 6'4", 256 pounds. So he's a tight end. He's a tight end.
Possesses tight end capability. I mean,
and to me, I am just hopeful at this point that I can get Jatavian Sanders at a crazy discount because of the Brock Bowers hype that will be going on for the entire pre-draft and post-draft process.
Yep.
of prospect analysis and Dynasty this year. He will likely go no higher in your 24 rookie drafts in 12-team formats than like the early second.
Yep, no higher than that. That's where he's probably going to go in the NFL
That's probably
draft
where he's
too.
going to go in the draft is in the second round. And to me, I know Pat Freiermuth has not been super successful from a production perspective that like less than people expected, at least in his first 3 years. But from a value perspective with Pat Freiermuth, over his first 3 seasons, he's maintained very well, and he ended up being a very valuable tight end, even a top 6 tight end for a stretch there, like around after his rookie season. With Ja'Tavion Sanders, I kind of see a similar value outlook for the first year or two, where because of the Kyle Pitts hype, because of the Brock Bowers hype, he's going to be shorted. And you're going to be able to get him at a discount, and he's probably going to produce wherever he goes as a rookie, and then he's going to shoot up boards. And
where have we seen that happen?
Dynasty is all about playing the market. It's all about playing the market. We can deal with Ja'Tavion Sanders' situation after the fact, after his production, but right now what I care about is his value and his skill set, which is really, really good. I mean, he really has checked every box from a breakout age perspective and maybe not so much from a production perspective in Texas, but he is going to be one of those more raw tight end prospects, which is why he's not going in the first round most likely like Brock Bowers is.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily worried about that because this is Big 12 football anyways, and it's not like tight ends are a big focal point of teams that play Big 12 football. It's very explosive and very big play dependent. But I mean, from a measurable size perspective and just when he broke out, I'm very confident in his value in 2024.
Yeah, and looking here at the Bakery, which is Ryan Bread's analytical model that kind of takes a statistical approach to evaluating these prospects, we have data back to 2017 in his model. And Ja'Tavion Sanders is the 8th overall tight end prospect since 2017, ahead of guys
solid.
like Trey McBride, Pat Freiermuth, George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta.
And where did all those guys go, or where were they drafted? Third round.
Most of them
about
second round.
Maybe late second. If Sanders is ahead of those guys, I really am confident in him going in the second round.
I think I am too. And I think he's definitely a guy that's going to be slept on because of, like you said, Brock Bowers. Let's take a look at Jonathan Brooks here. And this is going to be mostly situational because with Jonathan Brooks, I honestly thought he'd go back to school. But the fact, and we have said this and we will continue to say this, the fact that he declared for the draft after tearing his ACL late season means that him and his agent had to have gotten some decent feedback from NFL teams, good enough to say, yeah, it's good enough. You should go this year.
Like, you're not going to fall past
You're
this
not going to
point.
fall past X.
Yeah.
It's beneficial for you still to go even with the ACL tear. I cannot imagine where he would be without it. But obviously, guy out of Texas, sat behind Bijan, and then who was a redshirt sophomore this year. 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's got good size. Honestly, this year was his breakout year. He had 1,139 yards rushing this year and 10 touchdowns. He also had 25 receptions for 286 yards. He has kind of shown...
I love seeing that.
Yeah, no, he's shown that he's a pretty well-rounded back. And to me, I think he's probably the most well-rounded back in this class. I think that's why he's our running back one. And again, he was stuck behind Bijan and Roschon Johnson for his true freshman and redshirt freshman seasons. Again, we thought he was going to return, but he hasn't, and the ACL is going to at least be somewhat of an issue early in his career. He's projected right now in the mid-second to early third, probably, and if he gets mid to late second-round draft capital, that would be money. He would be the running back one in this class. He would. Yeah. And we have a small sample size because, again, we only had one season, but the one season was really, really good. He was able to hold off Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue, who were both very highly recruited running backs into Texas.
Blue's a good running back.
And that should tell you something. He won that job, and not only won that job, was hyper-productive with that job. Again, the fact that he's coming out this year after a torn ACL tells me all I need to know. I think Jonathan Brooks will be the first running back taken off the board in this class now that Travion Henderson is gone. I think he may have been anyways. I think you're maybe able to get him at early second in Dynasty drafts, which would be awesome.
Yep, I completely agree. And Braylon Allen is a guy that for at least until we're proven wrong, if we're proven wrong by NFL draft capital, we are going to hold our ground with Braylon Allen. There are a lot of, I don't want to say haters, but people that aren't quite sold on his production at Wisconsin. But we're going to keep singing his praises. 1,200 rushing yards as a rookie at Wisconsin. 1,200 rushing yards as a sophomore at Wisconsin. In only 10 games in 2023, he had 800 rushing, which I think this isn't quite up to date yet. I think he ended up breaking 1,000 rushing yards again his junior year, if I'm not mistaken. And he started to show a little bit of rushing or receiving upside as well, which is great for this new age of running backs in the NFL now. But with Braylon Allen, part of it is he's coming out of Wisconsin, and he was the running back in Wisconsin for 3 straight seasons since being a freshman. He is still 19 years old. 19. He'll be 20 soon, but he is going to be one of the youngest running back prospects that we've seen in a while that could get really, really good draft capital.
He could also slide.
He could
it's
also
not like
fall.
He doesn't have questions either.
Right.
But, best breakout age, 6th best backfield dominator rating, 14th best receiver dominator rating, which 14th best receiver dominator rating is pretty good for Braylon Allen, in my opinion, because that's what a lot of people say. He had 25 receptions for 105 yards. Yes, that if you're doing the math, not super great yards per catch there. We want to see that above 6 or 8, and it's hitting around 4. But again, the touchdowns, the yardage, the early breakout, the fact that he's super young, the size and the power. Yeah, I do question his versatility in open space and his twitch. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's not what every single running back in the NFL needs to have at this point.
No, what have we just seen? What was the craziest running back that no one expected to really do anything in the NFL ever? That ended up putting up 22 points per game this year. Kyren Williams. He went 5th round. There was nothing attractive about him from a measurable perspective. He was small. He was undersized. He was slow. But you put him in the right situation, and you have a pretty smart running back who proved that he was very intelligent in college, and that makes for a pretty productive running back. I'm not saying Braylon Allen is going to beat Kyren Williams. I'm just saying...
How about Isaiah Pacheco?
Yeah. Yeah.
A powerful runner, a guy that... even just this last week, we saw the benefits of having a powerful runner on your team when you need a first down to end the game.
Yeah. And these are guys with no draft capital. That transcended that situation regardless.
Imagine the Packers, but instead of A.J. Dillon, it's Braylon Allen.
Braylon Allen could be everything that A.J. Dillon wasn't for the Packers. If Braylon Allen went to the Packers, I would be ecstatic.
It would be great. And Aaron Jones would still be productive.
Yep.
I love Braylon Allen, and I think he's my running back too. So,
yeah.
All right, those are some guys we have our eye on. We wanted to discuss those today. It's always fun talking about the rookies. We're not rookie experts. We're not NFL experts. We're not Dynasty experts. We're nothing. We're 2 guys with a camera, and we talk about it, and sometimes people watch. So it's really fun.
Oh.
So again, this is not gospel. And look, half of these guys will not hit, maybe more. That's just how this works. But it's fun to talk about. So do us a huge favor, drop a like, make sure you subscribe. If you want more rookie content, flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain. Choose my other Flocker tier, get a team blueprint, and you get a bunch of rookie content. Appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later.